Hi, I'm Mr. Busey, and welcome to my classroom. Today, we're going to be talking about news sources. What makes something a credible news source versus something that's kind of unreliable? Feel free to join us and follow along with our worksheet, even if you're not technically a student. Totally fine, love to have you. What makes a news source credible? Well, peer-reviewed research is great. Let's say you want to learn something about medicine. Johns Hopkins is an authority on medical information, same with the Mayo Clinic, and they conduct research that's peer-reviewed. They review it and they check themselves, and they make sure that that's the facts. There's no flaws in their interpretation. In fact, oftentimes they don't even offer up any interpretation. It's just results of studies. Another characteristic of quality news and credible news is the amount of primary sources or quality secondary sources that they use. The more primary sources you can get, the better, which also leads to not including unsupported opinions. They stick with the facts. If you bring analysts on, things start to get muddy, but if you just talk to primary sources, that's what it is. And you look at Walter Cronkite, he read the Associated Press report and said, that's the way the world is. You make up your mind, is essentially what he did. And that's really like the peak, the pinnacle of ethical journalism. Now let's talk about what's considered an unreliable news source, or popularly known fake news. So fake news, not a whole lot of research or facts or primary or secondary sources that really corroborate the flow of the article and the conclusions that they draw within their articles. So they make claims, but it's unsupported. Another characteristic of some fake news, and I actually encountered this a couple weeks ago, is they omit parts of studies or falsely summarize research. Somebody made a claim in an article that wearing masks actually increases your risk for catching the coronavirus. And I thought, what? So naturally I read that this study was conducted, that they referenced, with medical students, and there were a group of students that had masks and students that did not have masks. And the students that had masks touched their face on average 23 times. Well, it omitted 23 times over what length of time? And also, what did the group of non-mask wearers do? Did they touch their face an equal amount of times? We don't know, because they omitted that part of the story. So there was no way to reference that. So the conclusion that they drew somehow was, wearing a mask increases your risk for catching the coronavirus. So completely unfounded and unsupported. Another characteristic, talking about unsupported opinions, projections or unfair analysis. So if you go into hypothetical situations, you risk losing some credibility, because then you'd start down that rabbit hole and you just keep going and going and going until you're totally off topic and you could have just been reporting the facts the whole time. So our activity today, with your worksheet, we're gonna sort out credible and unreliable news sources. Obviously with the intent to help bolster your opinions or arguments in, let's say, essays, if you're an aspiring reporter or an active reporter, news articles, debates, or most importantly, the Facebook comment section and Twitter. Because you need to sound like you know what you're talking about, at least. Otherwise, people will stop listening to you. And if you're just a normal person and people stop listening to you, yeah, okay, cool. Like, you just don't have friends. But if you're a journalist, not only do you not have friends, you're out of a job. Because if you're a journalist and you're known for lying and presenting fake or misleading news, nobody's gonna want to have you as a reporter. It's that simple. Your reputation as a journalist needs to be honest and fair and just reports the news, the facts. Nobody wants a liar in their organization. At least a good organization should not want you. And that moves us to today's lesson, which is how to not get roasted or labeled a conspiracy theorist. Now, there are 4 questions that we really want to answer throughout this process. So here they are. What type of source are you looking at? Are you looking at a primary source, a secondary source, or a tertiary source? So a primary source is what happened. Let's use an example. Let's say you're a reporter and you roll up on a scene and an apartment's on fire. okay, that's news. I gotta start writing stuff down. I gotta start like texting my editor, like, hey, I've got a scoop. Here we go. And I need to go around and talk to people. And I see this person hunched over, sweaty, out of breath. Well, okay, they probably know something because it looks like they might have been involved. So I go up to them and say, hey, do you know what's going on? And they say, oh yeah, I was cooking something and we have a gas stove and it was really greasy and I spilled the grease on the flame and it just shot up. So I thought, oh my gosh, everything's on fire. So I went to grab some water and threw it on and poof, everything just exploded even more. And I ran out and now we're here and now the fire department is coming and they're gonna put it out. So boom, there's your primary source. You got what happened. That's all you need. Now you as a journalist, when you report this, that's a secondary source. Your article is a secondary source. Your quote is a primary source because that's what you got from the person that was there that probably caused it. A tertiary source analyzes secondary sources. So let's say you get out a story and 4 other news organizations also say, cool, we want to report this too. Well, not cool, the department is on fire, but we got people on the ground too. We're going to get our stories out because we're a news station. We need to stay relevant. So you get 5 different reports, and then let's say somebody pulls it all together and gets one giant perspective on it. Well, they're now a tertiary source because they analyzed secondary sources. Secondary sources analyze primary sources. Tertiary sources analyze secondary sources. All right. So now, question number 2, to determine the validity of your article, how many primary sources are referenced? Now, the idea is to get more primary sources than secondary or even tertiary sources. So the standard that you should strive for, either writing or searching through an article, is to get at least 3 primary sources within your article or your video or whatever, because the more primary sources you get, the more complete story you get. Let's go back to our hypothetical situation here with our apartment fire. So you got the one guy who gave his account of the story. Okay, cool. Now let's get his roommate. He says, oh yeah, I saw him and yeah, he spilled on the flame and tried to put it out with water. And that was a dumb idea because it's a grease fire and poof, everything exploded. So we got out of there. Well, he just corroborated that first primary source. Now, let's say you go and get another person that was in the building at the time. And they say, yeah, I saw smoke billowing out from this room. And then more smoke came out and I saw them running and sprinting out of the house, and oh my gosh, it was crazy. And I got out as fast as I could. Well, that validates both of their stories. So there's 3 sources that validate that one story. So now you have a more complete picture of what happened. Question number 3, are there more than just facts in the article? So is there opinion? Is there analysis? Is there speculation? Is there hypothetical situations that have been introduced by the reporter? Well, that kind of muddies things up. That strays away from the primary sources and that launches into secondary and even tertiary sources. So the more stuck to facts and primary sources you can be, the better. And finally, your opinion. What does the article say? So your analysis of what the article says. So let's take our reporter, they write this up. Now you say, okay, so from my understanding, this is what happens. So your analysis of the secondary article or secondary source makes you then a tertiary source. Got it? All right, so once you figured all of these 4 questions out, this will help you determine how valid everything is. So we have this XY chart here. We have in the Y-axis opinions and in the X-axis facts, and both of these go from 0 to 10. Let's say you get 5 primary sources, you're killing it, and then you talk to the fire marshal who gives you the cause of the fire and the status of the building, but he's technically a secondary source. So it's a good secondary source, and you have a lot of primary sources, and that's it. You don't speculate anything. You don't think how much damage was amassed, how expensive this is going to be, how long it's going to take to rebuild, when they're going to be able to move back in. You stay away from all that. You just get the facts. That is right over here. There's no opinion there. It's just primary and secondary sources. So low opinion, high facts, that's what you want to look for. And that's what's going to give you credibility in your essays, in your debates, and in your comment sections. Now, what you got to be careful of is major news networks sometimes bring on a panel of experts. Well, even though they're a panel of experts, they may not have that experience that primary sources do, and they start speculating, they start introducing hyperbole and hypothetical situations, and that's not facts. We want to stay as low to this as we possibly can. Now, unfortunately, there are people out there that post anti-facts, so lies, just blatant lies. It's not facts, it's in the negative category if there was one. Those are definitely things you should avoid. Stay in this area. This is a credible area, okay? Stay away from opinions and hypothetical situations. Stick with the facts. That's it. And once you've determined that you've had a couple sources over here, you have found the key to finding credible sources, and you have found a way to validate your opinions and arguments, and you're ready to go win some Facebook comment wars. Let's go get them.